G'day everyone and welcome to the Brett Lee podcast. I'm your host Brett Lee and thanks as always for listening in. We're here. It's the Ashes, the Aussie summer. Just about half an hour ago, the Aussies, they retained the Ashes 3-0 up. We'll get to that in a second. We're going to talk about that in a lot more detail. You can contact the podcast anytime through the email, which is the Brett Lee podcast at news.com.au, or in your WhatsApp group, and you know where the episode notes are. Jump onto that and have a chat. Here with me, the 2IC, Brad McNamara, former New South Wales cricketer and EP for Fox Sports Buzzard. Half an hour ago, the Ashes, they're back. We have them again. How good?
Hi, Bingham. Hello, everyone out there. Well, the only thing you can say is Australia's pulled their pants down. 3-0, just a little over 2 days, and rolled them for 68. Thank you very much. That is as big an Ashes flogging as I can remember.
It's an absolute shellacking on what was a green wicket, but both teams have to bat and bowl on it, but Aussie's too good.
Well, as I said, England bowled out for 68. The wicket was actually had browned off nicely. So last night, it was a tough spell. That was the most amazing hour of cricket just about I can remember, especially broadcasting and working on. And no doubt Australia bowled beautifully. But that wicket, they can't blame the wicket. It was great bowling and some very, very ordinary batting.
Well, last night, Mitchell Starc, who has been on fire. He was on fire with the red ball up at the Gabba, the pink ball in Adelaide, and the red ball at the MCG on a hat-trick. Let's have a listen to how close he came to the hat-trick ball.
There's the edge. It didn't take long. Mitchell Starc had to turn around eventually, and he gains the approval of umpire Paul Wilson.
What about the reaction of some of the people in the crowd there?
So close.
Yeah, well, bowling to Joe Root, who's the number 2 ranked Test batsman in the world, you could not bowl a better ball if you're Mitchell Starc, and we've seen some great hat tricks over the years. So he's unlucky not to add to it.
What about Scotty Boland on debut? Picks up a lazy 6 for 7.
6 for 7. That's like the figures you used to get in the under 10s.
Well, not even 7.
That. And especially on debut, the second ever Indigenous male to play cricket for Australia.
Outstanding.
Who writes these scripts? It's just you couldn't write that up any better if you're Scotty Boland. He must still be pinching himself, saying, what the hell happened there? It was quite amazing. I mean, the scenes today, name man of the match in your debut test and take 6 for 7. But the scenes last night were just incredible.
Well, let's go back to last night. We'll have a listen to Scott Boland when he came on the bowl, picks up 2 wickets in his first over, and the reception he gets from Bay 13.
There he goes. They're up on their feet. Picked to play in the test match. He was a bolter. He's got to be feeling 12 foot tall at least.
He's probably feeling like Mervyn Gregory Hughes down there in front of Bay 13. They're going off.
Oh, that's great. That was it. 32 years of age. Probably never thought he was going to get his test debut. He makes his debut at his home ground. He gets that opportunity to stroll down to Bay 13 on the back of 2 wickets in an over. Can't believe it.
I don't know about you, Buzz, but I'm still getting goosebumps and the hairs on my arms are standing up. That just makes you feel so proud to be an Aussie and so pleased that a guy on debut can do that.
Yeah, we've sort of been waiting for iconic moments in this Ashes series, haven't we? Haven't had all that many so far. But we definitely, that hour last night was the most, as I said, close to the most amazing in the 20 years I've been doing cricket broadcasting. The most amazing hour I've worked on and witnessed. And that particular moment when he walked back towards an adoring Bay 13 crowd who were just going off their nuts. And he's such a humble, quiet guy. He almost seemed embarrassed by it, didn't he?
Well, he was. And, even when he got his cap, you could see the emotion. It was beautiful to see his family there. But it was almost like this guy's on a mission. You can actually tell that he's so focused on the game. He wasn't overawed by the situation. It's his home crowd. Home ground, when you say home crowd, he wouldn't have played in front of that many people at the MCG. But just the way that he went about his business and talk about impeccable line length, that's the reason why they picked him. And I will say, too, well done to the selection committee. I wasn't sure whether, they gave a guy one test. There's talk about these guys weren't 100% fit. They've backed Boland. They know how good he's been this season, and I guess the last couple of seasons, because he's not a spring chick. He's been around a long time.
He's 32 years old.
32, and they backed him, so well done to them.
Yeah, and an MCG specialist. His first-class record at the MCG was on top of everyone, including Pat Cummins, just about everyone that's bowled there in the last 10 years. So it was a good horses for courses selection. And remember, he replaced a guy who took 5 in Jai Richardson in the last test. So you'd have to say the selectors, for Australia at least, we'll get on to England shortly, as poor as the England selectors and selections have been, Australia's been good.
We're just on Boland. Let's have a listen now to his 5th wicket at the MCG today.
For here at the G.
To Mark Wood, who's a fighter. Straight away to the ground. Scotty Boland has taken 5. The man can do no wrong in front of his home crowd. 3.1 overs. 5 for 5.
Yeah, a very special moment. 5 wickets on debut. Caught the ball and just sort of threw it away to say, it happens every day.
Well, you tell me, Binger. You did it. 5 for on debut against India. What's it like?
It's the best feeling in the world. You sort of feel like you're floating on top of a cloud, and you just don't want that moment to finish. That adrenaline. If someone said to me, when you take that 5 wickets, and it happened to happen on my debut, which I was so pleased, a bit like Scott Boland, if they said run the 100 metres now, I reckon I could have beat Usain Bolt. Of course I couldn't, but that's the way you feel. You feel like you are unstoppable. You sort of feel as if all those moments, and it flashes before your eyes, all those moments when I've been injured, the heartache of being told you're not good enough. And Scott Boland would have gone through that many, many times. To understand that all those hard work, the dedication, the sacrifices that you've made for that exact moment, if you could bottle that, that is what sport does.
Here's an interesting question just on Scott Boland before we move on. He's taken 6 for 7. He's man of the match in his first test. What happens in the next test in Sydney now? Does he play? Josh Hazlewood will be back.
Good question. 6 for 7.
It's going to be a tough call for the selectors, isn't it?
It will be. I guess the best way to answer that is that there are players, I think of Brad Hodge, I think of Jason Gillespie, they scored 200. Don't play a game after that.
Be a good time to retire, wouldn't it? It's only downhill from there.
You can't get any better than that, can you?
Well, they may. Mitchell Starc is in an amazing series so far, leading wicket taker for Australia so far. They may decide to rest him. He's played all 3 tests. Whether they do that in Sydney or not, that might be an out as such for the selectors, but a very ticklish situation coming up.
Look, it's a tough one for the selection committee. Who do they go with? You mentioned, Hazlewood would definitely walk back in because he's one of Australia's best bowlers. They might go down the road of Mitchell Starc out of that preservation, give him a bit of a rest. But, yeah, Scott Boland, regardless of what happens, he's going to feel so proud. I'm really proud for him. He's a lovely guy, really proud for his family, and just, stoked that he's done such a great job.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, I don't think it'll be his only test. Let's hope it isn't. But if it is, what a test.
No, he'll definitely play again.
Yeah.
So, about, 40-odd minutes ago now, the Aussies, they won. Cameron Green, the big tall fella, Jimmy Anderson's on strike, and this is what happened.
Australia win the test match, win the series, retain the Ashes inside 2.5 days. Just plain crazy.
Well, it's been carnage here at the MCG. It started on the night of day 2, but it's followed into the morning of day 3. The Ashes retained. What a victory. What a moment for Pat Cummins, the Australian captain, and the rest of his troops.
Yeah, you can hear the excitement in the Aussie boys. That moment when you know you've got that urn back in your hand, it is such a special moment. And I just love the fact that everyone jumped on Cam Green. They're so pumped for him. They're hugging each other. Scott Boland, he's on there, laughing. And I reckon there's a few tears shed as well from a few of those players.
Well, what a great moment for Cam Green to bowl the delivery that wins or that retains the Ashes for Australia, but something he'll remember forever. And you have to say, just on Cam Green, I know he missed out a little bit with the bat again, but every time he grabs the ball, he just looks better and better every spell.
Well, he's very, very tall. He hits the crease super hard. He's got a beautiful action. He gets that nice trajectory off the wicket. That's what you want from a guy. And, there's a couple of things where he said to the journalists after the game, I think it was on night 1, that he's just trying to do his business from one end. I think he's doing more than just holding up one end. He's taking wickets too.
I tell you what, he's very handy in the gully as well. He's Jojo Gadget Arms. He's about 9 foot tall, and his wingspan's almost that of a A380. There's not much gets past him in there.
Righto, Buzz. What happens to the Poms now? They've been absolutely caned. What do? They've got a couple of days off.
Well, had a rough year. I mean, not often you feel for the Poms, I've got to say. I've been in England when we've lost Ashes over there. There's not much sympathy coming our way, but look, they had a COVID scare during this Test match. Some family members and staff went down. That had to be a massive distraction. They've had a tough year. They've played more Test cricket under lockdown pretty much and in inside bubbles this year than any other team around the world. Look, there was some pretty dejected. There's a lot of heads down at the end of today. I mean, it is embarrassing to lose a test, I'd imagine, inside before lunch on the third day on what was a reasonably good cricket wicket. It's hard to see them coming back from here. You'd hope they would fight back. They've got some quality players in their side, but their batting is just atrocious. They lost 6 for 36, I think, or 37 today. They just seem very prone to these batting collapses. They've been in some reasonable positions, probably in all 3 Test matches, but 3 batting collapses have just wiped them out of the contest. So they're going to have to hopefully have a relax, get through New Year, have a few drinks. I don't know, regroup and see if they can come out and at least be competitive in the remaining 2 Test matches.
Yeah, look, I'm trying to find words to be upbeat. I'm trying to be positive about England. And look, let's be honest, these guys are trying their heart out. And I know, and I've been on sides where we've lost, and it just feels so bad. And, you sort of get into a state where you just feel as if the whole world's against you, the press are against you, the crowd back home might be against them. But it has been woeful cricket from England.
And it's funny how
it's embarrassing.
Yeah, and it's funny how the cricket gods are so cruel. When you're on the receiving end of a flogging, all the bad luck, the bad decision seems to go against you. Like there's a couple of close ones today where the umpire gave LBWs that with this bizarre DRS situation we have, had they been given not out, would have been not out.
Good point.
All the bad luck seems to be coming their way, but that's the way cricket works. When you're on top, you seem to get all the things roll your way, and at the moment everything's rolling against them. It's hard to take too many positives out of Joe Root, class batsman, but once again he's been out nicking into the slips cord in 6 out of 6 innings, so he's got an issue in Australia. As good a player as he is, and he's been the top run scorer, he does have an issue. Jimmy Anderson bowled superbly, I thought, for England. Once again, he gets back to selections. I can't for the life of me understand why Stuart Broad didn't play in this test. Mark Wood was fantastic. But the batting is as much talk as we've sort of had over the last few weeks about what England bowlers are and aren't playing, as in Broad and Anderson, etc., and Wood. The batting has been the problem for them, and just these massive collapses. I mean, England can win. They win the odd session, but they can't back it up because the batting's just atrocious. I mean, they really need to be averaging 300 an innings to put pressure on Australia with the bowling attack they've got.
Well, look, I guess the other problem that England have is that they've sent back the majority of the backup players, the reserve players that were out here, a month or 2 ago. They've gone back for Christmas. They've gone back for the New Year. Where do they go from here, England? They've just got to... I don't know what they do. Whether they just go and have a couple of days away from sport. As you said, go and have a few drinks, relax. Just turn the TV off. Don't read the press. Just get away from sport, and then just come back to the Sydney Test, fresh, focused, and have a crack. But I cannot see England being competitive in these next 2 tests.
I think they have to totally change their attitude. They've lost the series. They've lost the Ashes. It can't get any worse. I think they've got to play a little bit like they play in the white ball game. They've got a pretty fearless attitude in that. I think they've got to be a bit more aggressive and take it to Australia a bit. It's easier said than done. Taking it to Pat Cummins and Mitchell Stark and those guys when they're bowling like that. But I think the Sydney wicket and probably the Hobart wicket will suit their batters a little bit more, probably not quite as much bounce and sideways movement. I think they just have to have we've got nothing to lose attitude and take it to Australia and, see if they can get a smile back on their face and actually, play some aggressive, positive cricket. And what's the worst thing that could happen? You lose 5-0. And everyone's sort of expecting that now anyway, so anything they can do from here will be a bonus. For that to happen, they need to change their attitude.
Well, I reckon if they went out and played one-day format, they wouldn't lose under, lunch before the third day. I reckon they'd be a bit
Well, the
more
hard thing
competitive.
is too, touring teams these days, there used to be, and even back when I was playing for New South Wales, the touring teams would come and there'd be a bit more time between test matches. So they would play against New South Wales, the England touring team, and then in between the next test, they'd play against Queensland or Victoria or whatever. So there was a lot of cricket, whether if you're out of form, you could work your way back into form or something you had to work on as a batter or a bowler. At the moment, there's nowhere to hide. They're just going from one flogging to the next without the opportunity to play any cricket or get out in the middle and put things right. So it's a tough place to be in.
It is, but look, I think the only way is up for England. They can just be positive now and just try to find a way to win. But we've got a very special guest coming up in segment 2 who I'm looking forward to, Isa Guha, the former English female cricketer and obviously Fox Sports commentator. But before we go to a quick little break, Buzz, how was your Christmas and what's your plans for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day?
Well, Christmas
How was Santa? Was he good?
Santa was fantastic, actually. He bought too much food and booze, as he always does.
God love him.
I wish he'd ease up on that. We had a very, very nice family Christmas. Spent mostly with my son, which was great because a few of us actually didn't go down to Melbourne this time around with the test. That was the first Christmas night I've spent at home for about 20 years.
Really?
So that was unusual. Didn't know what to do with myself.
Ollie get spoiled?
Ollie got spoilt. Normally I jump on a plane at 6 p.m. full of piss and bad manners and head down to Melbourne. This time I was at home well behaved.
Full of piss and bad men as well.
Yeah. New Year's Eve will be fairly quiet, but I think you and I might be catching up New Year's Day for a quiet sip.
Yeah,
bringing the 2022
at the Lee household. We're hosting a little bit of a shindig.
What should I expect there?
Oh, you should expect some beautiful wines, some good music. As the day goes on, maybe a couple of tunes. I'll be expecting you to get up on your lead guitar.
Okay.
Got a couple of special guests coming as well. A couple of singers.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that.
Too.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of what I'm expecting anyway, so that's good.
That's a given.
All right.
You get that.
Lock it in.
Our special guest, and we have Isa Guha. She's only a youngster. She's still only 36 years of age. And have a listen to these stats. 113 matches for England in all 3 formats of the game, Test, One Days and ODIs. 148 poles. Now, it says medium fast, but I reckon it's fast. I reckon she bowls rapid. Isa.
She would have been nasty too, I reckon.
Very nasty. Isa Guha, cricketer, Fox commentator around the world. She sings, she enjoys a glass of red. Welcome to the podcast.
Great to be on, guys. Thank you very much.
How are you?
Yeah, I was probably about half your pace, Brett. So let's just put that out there now.
Well, I know you got half the sort of foot size as mine.
Half a pace, twice the brains, I reckon.
Yeah, exactly. We just saw recently about half an hour ago the Ashes, back to the Aussies. What's your first feelings and thoughts?
Strangely, not surprised. Just the way England have collapsed in the last 2 years, in the last 18 months. We've seen it time and time again. I just thought today they might have hung on a bit longer. They're staring down the barrel of defeat. There's no doubt about it. It's match point for the Aussies. But I just thought maybe a Roger Federer moment or something, that they could string a partnership together, Root and Stokes, captain, vice-captain, but they were just completely obliterated. And it's been the same story throughout the course of the tour. Depressing for people watching back home. I think it's been a tough couple of years with COVID and everything. It's dark, cold winter months, and I think when Ben Stokes announced that he was going to be part of the group to tour the Ashes, that there was a little bit of hope there. But I don't think anyone could have imagined it to be quite so dominant from an Australian point of view before the series started.
Be middle of the night back home in UK, bowled out for 68. Reminiscent, I was there. We were both there the day Australia in 2015 got rolled for 64 at Trent Bridge, and it sort of felt a little bit like that, didn't it? What do you think the reaction's going to be when people wake up back home this morning in a few hours?
Yeah, well, I think it'll be same old story. It'll be a quick peek at the score and go back to bed. But something that people, I guess, have become accustomed to as a cricket lover and following England cricket over the years, they've been used to this kind of performance. And so I think it's getting to a point now where people are becoming impatient and frustrated, and maybe in the last 12 months they might have stuck with the team and the coaching staff. Now there needs to be wholesale changes. And,
so
to the structure,
the gloves could be off.
The structure and the system of cricket in England, 3 or 4 years ago, when Andrew Strauss was director of cricket in England, and he specifically said that the focus would be on white ball cricket, purely because of the World Cup that was in 2019 in the UK, and it's gone so far in that direction. I mean, England are an incredible white ball team, but when it comes to the longer format, they just don't know how to string wins together, and it's frustrating because you can see a lot of positives within the group of players that they have, but they just cannot play as a team. And yes, it's been a difficult year in the fact that they played more tests than anyone, and they have had to manage players. Australia played just one test this year prior to the Ashes, so they could almost throw all their eggs in one basket and take them all to the T20 World Cup. And I actually thought, well, Josh Hazlewood, Pat Cummins, Mitch Starc all being part of that T20 World Cup campaign, they might come to the Ashes tired. Not at all.
Tired of losing.
But they had that winning feeling with them coming into the tour. And England, while they separated out their teams a bit more, I thought maybe that might keep them fresh. But I don't think preparation helped. I'm not using that as an excuse. It's just a fact that, they had 2 warm-up games ahead of this tour. 2 of them got pretty much rained out. Barely any time in the middle for the bowlers and the batters. Someone like Rory Burns, whose arms and legs everywhere when it comes to batting, and someone who does need that time in the middle. Marnus Labuschagne had 16 first-class games before this series because he knew in his mind what he needed to do to get ready to play cricket. And I think England have just been found wanting. Decisions. Stuart Broad not playing the first test at the Gabba, that was a big moment. And I think just set off this chain reaction of events whereby England have just fallen by the wayside.
So what, if I ask you the question, when we go right back to the Gabba, selection, and we've been on air a fair bit throughout this Ashes campaign already with Fox Sports, I'm still baffled with some of the squads and the teams that England pick. We saw no Broad, no Anderson the first test. We saw Mark Wood apparently rested for the second test, injected back to the third test. We saw Broad not playing, here in Melbourne. Explain to our listeners, how is that possible when you got such... I mean, you're not going to get a better bowler than Jimmy Anderson, period, for England, in my opinion. And Stuart Broad, over 1,100 test wickets. We've talked this to him, we're blue in the face. How can this happen?
They were looking too far ahead. And Stuart Broad, his reaction to the situation was, I'm a bit more pragmatic about it. He was dropped a couple of years ago in England and he was devastated and he was very vocal about it. But this time he said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So they're looking too far ahead. They're looking at the whole series. You need to be playing your best 11 in that first test match. I understood the James Anderson situation because he's 39 years old. He got a calf injury in the last Ashes tour and then missed the rest of the tour. Hasn't played a lot of cricket. Coming pretty much fresh, not a lot of overs under his belt coming into the tour. And you want him in Adelaide. So I understood that decision. But not playing Stuart Broad, even just from a psychological point of view, even if he's not firing at full capacity, you do almost risk playing him in that first test because of the mindset of David Warner. You guys know, as well, more as bowlers, but as batters, you just want to find your feet in the first Test match of a series. There would have been nerves there. David Warner's played many Ashes series before, but you want to get started and make a statement. And I think by not playing Stuart Broad in that first Test match was just a
ludicrous.
It was a huge mistake.
Yeah. Well, righto, Ish. You've had a tough morning. A tough year. Let's try and. You've always got a smile on your face, but let's try and get a bit more of a smile on your face now. I quite often get asked. Fair to say, Aussie men are infatuated by your voice, and probably a lot of women. I always get asked when I'm playing golf or out and about, who's that Isa Guha? I love her voice. Let's try and give people a bit of a sense of. I won't ask where the voice come from, but there's probably not much you can do about that. But let's go back to your early days in the UK. Obviously, being read out your stats, playing cricket in England. Isa Guha, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your early days.
Yeah, grew up in High Wycombe, which is about half an hour west of London. Mum and Dad moved over to the UK in the 60s, went back to get married to Mum, then brought her over. And yeah, early days, I basically copied my brother in everything he did. Cricket in the genes, Indian background, cricket on the telly, cricket in conversation at home. And my brother, 7 years older than me, was already playing cricket, badminton, hockey, tennis, everything. And I used to try and chase after the ball in the back garden. It was, the perfect cricket wicket, long, thin, uphill into the wind, classic. He'd get me out quickly, and then I'd have the ball in my hands, and for the rest of the evening I'd be trying to bowl at him. But yeah, introduced to the local cricket club, no girls teams around at the time. And I think there was a bit of a reluctance there from Dad initially of putting me in with the boys, but Mum convinced him, and at the age of 7 or 8 I was playing with the boys' Colts down there. And I think that not only was that good for me personally from a playing sport point of view, but just from a confidence point of view, being able to, I guess, handle being out of my comfort zone and challenged me in that regard, not just being the only girl, but I was also the only girl of Indian descent amongst British white boys and British Pakistani boys. So and because Mum and Dad never saw an issue with that, I don't think anyone else did. So I guess early on I was kind of treated the same as everyone else, which was great. And it was actually badminton that I loved more. So I would play badminton in the winter, cricket in the summer. And
I never knew that. Badminton.
Yeah, badminton. Yeah.
Hard on the knees.
It ruined my back for a bit, so I had to stop. But and then cricket just took me further quicker, and I was sort of the England trials and set up pretty early.
So you mentioned back to cricket. So the tender age of 16, sweet 16, back in 2001, you make your debut for England, and then you fast forward about 6 years, almost 7 years, and you pick up 9 for 100 in a game to help England win and retain the Ashes against the Aussie girls. So it must have felt good for you all that time, in the backyard bowling to your brother, and then you make your debut at 16, but then 5 or 6 years later, you're taking 9 for in a test. I mean, I can see you smiling across the table.
Well, you guys have had this feeling, I'm sure, where literally every ball you bowl, it's either going to get them out or it's going to be it's going to literally every ball. It was like that Pat Cummins spell last night, or Mitch Starc, or Scott Boland. It just genuinely felt like I couldn't do anything wrong, and it was weird because I wasn't due to play that game, and I got called in last minute because of an injury. And Bradman Oval, which has an incredible aura about it anyway, it's got that white picket fence, really lovely ground. It's just really green, so I felt at home. I felt like I was playing in England, and it was just happened to be overcast conditions that morning. Won the toss, let's to bowl, and I'm in there bowling for England, and I haven't slept that night, knowing that I was going to play. And it'd been a tough tour. We played a few ODIs. I wasn't picked. They kept going with 2 spinners, so I wasn't getting an opportunity. And then I did at the SCG, and I bowled terribly. So I thought, that's it. That's my tour done. So to get the opportunity was amazing, and then to get a wicket pretty early on was, again, it just kind of relaxed me. And then, managed 5 for, I think, in that first innings. And then Karen Rolton decided to declare when I'd picked up my 9th wicket.
No.
That's good of her.
Typical Aussie.
Yeah. Spoil the party.
But yeah, an incredible moment.
So I want to talk to you a bit. You've been a trailblazer in the media, especially in cricket media. It must make you very proud to see where women's cricket is at the moment. But in terms of the media, it's been a fairly closed shop for a long, long time. And, you're now one of the great broadcasters in world cricket across all formats. Tell us how you got into it, what drove you into it, and it's been an amazing journey, of which Binger and I have been lucky to be part of. We watch a lot of it from a distance when you're doing your stuff in the UK.
Yeah, it's very, very kind of you, Buzz. And you guys have been part of that journey, absolutely. So never thought of it as a career. I'd seen Claire Connor do some commentary and some presenting, actually, for Channel 4 while they had the rights. And Mel Jones had done a bit of work on the women's game. So I was seeing it a little bit, but not, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind, and I never thought that I could do it. And then I got this opportunity in 2011. I'd done a bit of punditry before, as you do a few interviews here and there and some punditry for Sky. And in 2011, I got a message on Twitter randomly from a guy at ITV, which is a broadcaster in the UK. And they called me in. I just thought, oh, amazing. They might just want me to be a pundit on the IPL. It was starting in a couple of weeks. And Tony Pastor, who was the head of the sport at the time for that particular production, said, no, the girl that we normally use, Mandira Bedi, who you might have come across, was pregnant. So she wasn't going to be coming over, and they needed to find a presenter. I'm cricket, I've got an Asian background. Why don't you just go for a screen test and see how you go? I was
Seriously
wooden. Honestly,
Can't
it was
imagine that.
awful. It was so bad. But he was like, no, you're great. Come in. You're going to work with Matt Smith. He was my co-presenter. And the only thing that got me through the whole thing was my cricket knowledge, being able to ask the right questions. But everything else was just from the school of what not to do in broadcast. Literally, I wasn't looking at the right camera. Like I said, wooden, no personality, monotone, which I don't think people... I think it's changed a lot now, because kids grow up and they're on Instagram straight away. So they're already doing videos of themselves and they're learning how to be in front of camera.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a journey. I just embraced it. I thought, it's an experience. I've always wanted experiences in life, and I never thought I'd do it again. And then I just kept getting asked back, got an opportunity in India, and it's actually presenting I was doing more than commentary. Than lead. I never thought I could be a lead commentator.
No, and that's important. That you should explain the significance of that, because while we did have women working in cricket media, the lead commentator, basically the ball-by-ball commentary was something, I think vaguely, Kate Fitzpatrick, was it, tried it at World Series cricket, and that was a bit, it didn't go down too well. But you were one of the first that, I know you started doing a bit of that on when we had you over for Triple M, which was great fun, and then it progressed from there. And then to the point, we'll get back to the commentary set where I think you were the first one to ever conduct a toss in a test match, which was amazing for Fox Cricket a couple of years ago. So it's amazing how quickly you've blazed that trail and to where you've got to now.
But it takes people like yourselves. So, and it's all about timing. Initially, anyway, it was, I was starting to do some stuff for Sky and BBC as a pundit, and then slowly getting more opportunities to do interviews and things like that. And you're learning your craft around the world, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be thrown into situations around the world to be able to commentate, and I was, I think it was 2015 they introduced women into the IPL commentary team. So myself, Anjum Chopra, Lisa Laker, Mel Jones. I was doing some stuff over in the Caribbean Premier League. So that was actually a great chance to practice lead commentary on television. But the first time I did lead commentary on radio was Triple M. And that was, I don't know if you remember this, Buzz, but I was coming out to Australia just to have a bit of a holiday. I'd just finished my thesis. It'd taken 7 years. I was over it. And I was like, I just want to get away to the beach.
What was the thesis again?
Oh,
I can never remember this. I know every time you tell me it goes in one ear and out the other.
oh, that was the plan after cricket initially, was to go into science or whatever. And
What did you study?
just something to do with the effect of junk, which is a protein, inhibition, so inhibiting it on the peripheral nervous system in aging. So what happens to cells when you inhibit that pathway?
Okay, well, I think Bing and I have done a bit of research on the effect of booze on your brain cells.
Kill a few brain cells.
It might be something different, I think, what you study. Sorry, go on.
That might have an impact too.
Yeah.
It'd be a good study.
Usually does.
And I got in touch with you because you were the only person I think I knew in broadcast at the time.
Yeah, we'd met during the 2015
We
Ashes.
did, that's right. And
I realised what a cheeky little bugger you were.
Very
I thought
cheeky.
I like you. And, but it's funny how you get first impressions of people. You hear that voice and people don't realise, there's a lot more. You're totally different than your voice is, if that makes sense. There's a fair bit of cheek and a little bit of mongrel in there at times, which we all love.
Yeah, and it's also, I think it's very important to be cheeky, but also very important to have fun on air, and that definitely comes across when you broadcast. But I guess the question I got for you is that we all hear the sort of sledging in the male form in the game. What about when the girls play each other? Is there sledging? Is there gamesmanship? Is there send-offs?
yeah, most definitely there are. You just have to look at Catherine Brunt with her send-offs.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Hops in.
And she is a proper character of the game. I mean, I love her. I've known her since I was like 13. She's been through a tremendous amount of, 2 prolapse discs in her back. Many times I've thought that she might leave the game, but she stayed on. But she doesn't give an inch. And in the dressing room, she would be that kind of character that just kind of brought us all together and almost lowered the tone. And
and you?
Yeah, I mean, we followed
hopping
her.
in and do you have a best sledge you've ever or a send off?
No,
I
I didn't have the pace to back it up, Binger. So I
But
just
you've
kind
got
of
the wit.
I would just berate myself more than anything.
McGrath like. Do you have another dream that you want to tick off? I know that you mentioned about your thesis that you've been doing.
Yeah.
What else?
I don't know, really. I think, look, I think the last couple of years have been quite introspective for a lot of people, just to kind of understand what they're doing. Who are we as people? What are we doing with our lives? How do you want to, if you were hit by a bus tomorrow, how would you want to leave this earth, sort of thing? And I feel very, very honoured and privileged to do what I do in broadcast. I love being part of cricket. I do a lot in administration as well, off the pitch. That's been quite challenging over the last 6 months. But ultimately, it's about having the strength to do that, because there is a lot of change happening, and to be able to try and influence that change from behind the scenes is something I feel quite passionate about, but only if you've got the strength to do it, because sometimes it can be quite daunting. So I think that's where my focus is at the moment. Obviously wanting to do my job to the best of my ability, and like anyone, whatever job they do, they just want to do it to the best they can and get better and improve. And who knows what else? I mean, like I said, I love to experience everything that life has to offer, because we're only here once. So.
That's a good point. Well, listen, on behalf of me and Buzz and everyone listening, thank you for what you've achieved for England as a cricketer, what you've achieved, second part of your life as a broadcaster, and we love those tones that we hear when we turn on Fox Sports in the morning. So looking forward to our next jam, our next catch-up, and maybe even a little sneaky red or two. Isa Guha, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone so much for listening into this episode of the Brett Lee Podcast. If you like what you're listening to and hearing, feel free to leave a review wherever you get your podcast. Now, the next episode we'll be chatting a lot more about the Ashes. It'll be the 4th test coming to you live here from Sydney. answering some questions from you guys. And also, if you want to send an email, make sure you send it to the britleapodcast@news.com.au and get involved in the WhatsApp group. Now, Buzzard, a couple of predictions. Prediction for you for New Year's Day, firstly, and then the Poms for the fourth test.
Well, I don't know about New Year's Day, but I'll make a bold prediction and say the 2nd of January I'll wake up with a massive hangover after being at your place. So you can bank that. The fourth test, it's hard to see England coming back. They seem like a beaten outfit, but let's hope they can come back and show a bit of fight at least.
My prediction for the fourth test will be they'll be a lot stronger, because I think now the pressure's off them. They can't do any worse. They'll come back and they'll play with that freedom. So I'm going to back in when they come back and at least win a couple of sessions.
But before we go, Binger, 2021, we're just about to put a bow on it.
Been a tough one.
Been a tough one, hasn't it, for a lot of people out there?
I think we've seen some amazing cricket. We've seen some horrible things that have happened around the world, but we are somehow getting through it. You know, people are getting vaccinated and they're getting back to some normality. It's not perfect, but I think at the end of the day we have to live with what we're going through.
Yeah, and to all those people out there that may be listening and have done it tough, hang in there. Let's hope there's better days ahead and 2022 is a bit kinder.
As we always say, Buzzard,
Keep your chins up.
keep your chins up until next time. See you soon.